almost a full board today with Rob Nato, Dulcie LaPoma, Norm Goupel, Andrea Folsom, Jim O'Brien is unable to make it today. And then we've got Superintendent Mike Flynn, Michelle Clark, and then our representatives, Max Aframe and Juliet Shahadi. So thanks everyone for coming. We are gonna start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll have Norm lead us. It's like right around there.
I'm gonna lead you in the right way.
Okay.
Here we go. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right. So this evening it looks like we only have one set of public meeting minutes to approve. So, correct? Yeah. So this would just be meeting minutes from our budget work session, which was October 9th.
Regular board meeting.
Sorry, regular board meeting, not a budget work session. Our regular board meeting, which was October 19th. Am I reading all this right?
9/28.
I'm totally wrong. All right, let's try this again. I'm looking at our upcoming meeting dates. I switched papers. So we have regular meeting minutes, which I actually did read from our meeting on September 28th. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Whew, got through that.
No, now you switch back to here because now it's their turn.
Oh, great. Now I gotta switch back. All right.
Okay.
This is my first time leading a meeting with our new superintendents. This is exciting. All right, so we're moving on to our student representative comments. Anything this week, guys?
So far so good. I do want to say that the new science labs are looking great, and I think this week is the week when we get to actually start doing labs because the chemicals are getting moved in and all of that. So I'm very excited for that. Yeah.
Yep, and on more of like a sports front, I feel like every team's doing really well right now, and I think we're all very excited for playoffs and everything like that. So things are very good in the school.
Excellent. Great, thank you. I can't believe we're at playoffs already.
Yeah.
This has flown. Excellent. Do we have any comments from the board tonight? Yes.
Just congratulations to Kristen Dineski, our very own, who ran the Boston Marathon yesterday and was the #1 woman in her age category and ran a sub-3-hour marathon.
Oh my gosh.
I'll leave the age category, you can discuss with her. 840 runners in that group that she was competing against.
That's awesome.
Congratulations, Kristen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just great to see. I got to see that yesterday. I just wanted to say thank you to Dan Reserve. We had a terrific cross-country meet middle school this week, and it was well organized, a lot of fun, and just a whole bunch of schools coming together to have a safe meet was really, really great. The last thing I just want to say is a thank you to Jeff Daly. Over the last couple of weeks, he's held some Zoom for parents to really walk through this whole college process. It is now October where parents start doing the whole FAFSA thing and start getting things ready. And as a father, as a senior, it's been very helpful asking the district for support, for questions on the next couple of steps as we go through these college visits. So I just want to say thank you to the school district for helping all our parents and arranging an opportunity to learn more about this process for college. So.
Excellent. Thanks. All right. Any other comments? No? Okay. I think I can now pass the torch to you.
Sure,
Current
thank you.
business.
So current business, first topic for discussion is my goals. Looking for feedback if necessary. I haven't got an email yet, so if we want to discuss here. Also looking to, we can either wait till the next meeting or lock those in now. And then from there, I mean, the work's already begun, so it's not holding any of the work up at all. It's more about reaffirming and confirming essentially what we went back to since our retreat in July. So really opening it up for discussion and or confirmation.
I think the only question I have, Mike, is the deadline to complete these goals is the end of this year, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of those are multiple year goals,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
developing strategic plan is great, but obviously it'd be enacting and following through and check-ins. So some of those in there don't have end-of-year deadlines.
Yep.
It's more about, some of the things are beginning process, that type of stuff, but yeah. There are both deadline achievable goals as well as multiple year goals.
Perfect.
Can I ask a question on process stuff?
Sure.
So, I don't know, it's typical in a school district, but do you typically do like a half-year sort of review collectively? Is it the same thing that we would do with our board goals? Does it make sense to think about like how we're thinking about time, sort of what's inbound with the goals versus out of bound?
Yeah, so this is the first year these have been put in place.
Totally.
Okay, so new process. So I don't want to talk about next year too soon, but next year, obviously, these would be in place prior to the start of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. For this year, there's typically a mid-year review, absolutely, and that happens amongst the board.
Okay.
And then you can check boxes on yes or no. Yep, exactly. And these are fluid goals. Right? We want to make achievable, actionable, all those, so forth and so on. So this is where I think I try to condense everything that we've been trying to discuss. But mid-year, so now that we're off timeline,
Yeah.
right? So December is not going to be that mid-year. You're talking probably February, March-ish, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
That sounds good. Anything else? Would you like us to,
I would love
Vote on this?
a motion to finalize and
All right.
then just continue the work.
great.
Yeah.
Do we feel comfortable moving forward with that? Norm, did you have another question?
No, no.
All right, so is there a motion to approve and move forward with the superintendent goals as put forward by Mike Flynn?
So moved.
Any discussion? Nope, all in favor? Any opposed? All right,
Thank you, guys.
Keep
I
going.
appreciate that. I'm looking forward to that. All right, strategic plan update. I have had great conversations with some community groups. We're working on a process. The good news is the strategic plan's ready to go. So I met with Rick Barnes, who's going to be the leader of this, and met with him for over 2 hours last week in regards to developing the timeline, the plan, all of that. Why I'm coming to you guys this evening is really looking for 2 school board members to be on the steering committee and chair. So from that steering committee, you'll have Rick, 2 board members, probably 2 administrators, teachers, all of those representatives, right around 9 to 11 is that magic number with what Rick was saying. Rick starts that process of meeting with the steering committee. They establish the goals. From there, it could be subcommittees, focus groups. What's funny is we're moving back to the real world, so there'll be more in-person stuff, not all Zoom, unlike what happened with me. So really, he's going to take the lead and get rolling with that and develop a 5-year plan. And he's anticipating it being completed by February, which is amazing. And we can also use that document for this year prior to the district meeting, things of that nature. But it's going to be a pretty significant leading document for us for the next 5 years in regards to CIP, budgeting, curriculum, facilities, all of that. It's really going to come out of that. So looking for action for 2 board members who would like to be on the steering committee, excuse me.
great. And I know that I talked to Jim before this meeting, and he would really like to be on that committee, so I can put forward his name and not my name.
And Jim and I did have a discussion about this, and since he said I was coming down from the facilities project, that I have a little more downtime, I'm happy to assist with it if the board's fine with it.
Sounds great.
Jim and Norm, all in
Yeah.
favor of that? Works for you guys?
That sound good?
Sounds
Oh,
good?
great.
Great.
Okay. So I will meet with Jim and Norm sooner to get that ball rolling, and we can begin that process. So what we'll do, though, just so more of the communities involved are aware, there'll be check-ins, right? It's not just now you heard it and you'll see it at the end. There'll be check-ins and updates through the board meeting, through communication. Our social's about to be launched, as I look up. So there'll be frequent postings from there, ways to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, so forth and so on. So you'll see a lot more communication means coming out, but this is not the last time you've heard of it. In fact, you'll hear of it multiple times. All right. Okay, if not, I'll move forward to the presentation. It is in your packet, so you don't have to relocate, Norm. You can just follow along there, okay? I want to reiterate that the presentation, we've changed our process, okay, significantly. And through that, you're now a little bit more I don't want to say part of it, that's not fair, but we're showing you the layers, okay? We met last week with the admin team and yourselves, and we presented, I'll call the wants, right? These are some of the wants we want, some of the needs we're seeing, but it's both, it's wants and needs. And as we go through this budgeting season, which is significantly earlier, it's the checks and balances. So what you're going to see tonight, and I want to be very clear, is the first level, right? So the number's going to be high. I'm not hiding it. It's going to be high, but there's a reason. It's because everything is in there. And I think it's valuable to show you and the community what everything is, because it might come down the pike next year or the year after. And that's what the strategic plan helps us. But this just allows for that layer of communication of, all right, we've been working on budgets since August, believe it or not. And when we met with you guys last week, we communicated, and this is kind of, I'll say it's the first draft. So I don't want anyone panicking. Please don't panic, knowing that it's not the final. Next week will be a work session, which we'll start doing the chopping block and eliminating things here and there. And then the last week in October will be, I'll say, a cleaner number is what Michelle and I have been saying. And then you'll get to hash it out again as a board on that meeting, and then we can finalize in November, all right? We don't need to significantly change everything up, but we're already ahead of the game. We're trying to get things sooner. It'll help with the budget committee in the town, all those things. So please understand that this is just the first draft. And I think it's important to understand how we got here, right? Not just always asking for money, but understanding why. And it's really because of how great Hopkinton is. And I've come to learn it really fast. And the parents that have come through the office have all talked about how happy they are with what the education their students are getting. So it's important to keep that in the forefront, to continue to talk about education. You know, why does an extra teacher make a difference, right? It's not just a number. There's a difference, and there's reasons behind those steps, whether it be better instruction, better feedback, better communication with families because you're managing a smaller caseload. All those things come into play, but I just want to continue to talk about the philosophy. So within the district, we want to make sure that students are learning through multiple strategies, right? We've talked about pathways before, and we're trying to get to how do we get to the end game, offering different opportunities for different students. Utilizing the best practices, and this is a little bit more of my lens, right? So I'm more of an operational, that's just my lens. So you'll see things that we're trying to improve within the SAU, whether it's Panda Docs, whether it's you see Parent Square that's coming out. So some of those are significant changes financially, but we want to make sure that we're updating our business practices to keep up and also become more efficient. And then more specifically what you heard last week, right? You heard about raising the bar, increasing rigor, but also closing gaps because of the pandemic. So you'll see a couple areas of focus around that. So just out of this office, it's the goal of this process, why we've moved it up, why we have 2 work sessions, why we're focusing on budget. It's just about communication. I found that most times parents and community members just want to know why. Why are you doing it that way? How is it calculated that way? What's it for? And that's what this process is for, so that we can get through trying to knock off the more questions, then the better we communicate, then the less question of what we're asking for. And the justification for why we're coming with the number that ends up coming with it. So that's just a quick blurb. Moving into the overview, you're going to see major budget drivers, some projected enrollments. Remember, they're projections for a reason. Highlights of the increases. It's important to know what's going up and why. And then you have to talk about required. That's one thing that gets missed, right? Whether it's retirement, insurance, all those things that factor into how we operate as a school. We'll talk about some staffing proposals and ideas, and then overall where we are with our proposal. Questions yet? You want me to wait till the end? Wait till the end? Okay. All right, things to keep in mind. Things that were out of our control, the facility bond project, remember that was already approved, so we have to pay for that. It's non-negotiable, it's not really a choice. Retirement, same thing, contribution, state's done a good job of kicking it down to the districts repeatedly, lower levels. And you'll hear us talk about special education. It's really challenging to budget because we literally had a $70,000 change this morning from when we started. that's what happens. It's an unknown, and it's an unknown, but it's an unknown for the right reasons. We have to support the students, we have to take care of them. IEPs are legal documents, all those things come into play, but it's really a challenge when it comes to special education budgeting. So with enrollment next year, we're looking at a total of about 950, which is interesting because I think as we get to later in the meeting, you're gonna see, I think we're 945 who came in at October 1st. So some of the numbers don't jive, but that's, again, it's projected. So they're talking about move-outs, move-ins. Kindergarten, pre-K have been a real challenge now because of the pandemic. A lot of people are choosing private daycares or things of that nature. So trying to calculate those costs have been certainly a challenge. But next year, we're looking at 950 as a projected enrollment. All right, moving into Harold Martin. I'm gonna, every once in a while, I'll pass it to Michelle, but in general supplies, is it reclassified? Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we reclassified some things because of a rule at the state, meaning if it was $100 or less, it was supplies, now it's $1,000. So there's been some adjustments. So when you're looking at the documents, the reason why we're putting the highlights here is so that you know, are all of a sudden we asking for 4,000 more? No, it's just shifted from one line to the other due to some reclassification. Geodes, last week you heard from Mr. Carosa in regards to support materials and new program to help align. It's a significant cost. It's about $37.90, I think, a grade. And we were looking to start that process with 3 grades. When we talked about raising the bar earlier in the presentation, that's some of that reading materials, starting to try and support some of our high-end students, right, with Lexals or reading levels, whatever it may be, trying to build some of that library. And then transportation isn't tied necessarily to our big contract, but more specifically to some of the smaller field trips. So at the end, I want to also put it into a little bit more perspective. This is our operational budget per school. So no humans, okay? No humans are in this cost, and no facilities. Facilities has been pulled out. So operationally, bills up about $22,000. Into Maple Street, same thing you heard last week from Ms. Doyle is IXL, which is another support piece that we found through the pandemic that has helped greatly. Some math materials with some of the consumables with the changes of the programming, and then some benchmark kits. So operationally, she's up 13, pretty simple. All right, getting into the middle high school, remember major increases, there are a few that maybe not would have qualified as significant to present. So if you're looking in the budget documents, there might be a few more, but these are some of the ones that we pulled out. A lot of them, as you can see, the trend here is materials, right? New science labs means we can do more things. New evaluations of materials, reading materials we need to replace. That's more in regards to math, some new textbooks, things of that nature. So really, their area of need is we're starting to get into that cycle. And we kind of talked about auditing our materials so that it's not a one hit all the time, trying to plan and prepare for a cycle of replacement, whether it's math and social studies and science. But as you can see right now, this is one of the significant needs that we've identified starting in this process. So you can see there's a difference of about $13,000. All right. Okay, so special education, we're shifting. Some of those services are now going to, you'll see it into staffing, where we're trying to get some of the contracted services into our own budget, hiring a person, which makes far more sense in regards to how much we pay out. Tuition, again, that's a case-by-case basis when students come in or not, whether they need to be placed or not. Those typically be the ups and downs in that. But in there, this is the one, as of this morning, it was at we were at 370,000 return. Now it's 329 because we had to add a bus. And now we have to project that bus for next year. So that's how quickly that line can shift. So as I said, this is the first draft, but that 329, it might go up or down between now and when we finalize this. But that's Mandy and Michelle trying to a great job of protecting the district with their forecasting and how they're looking for it. So we're feeling pretty good about that number as of today. So I'm not sure if you've done this before, but I asked Michelle to pull facility out of the building, right? So most of the times they've been cooked into the building budgets, and they're still there. But I think it's easier to identify when you pull it out and understand the significance. And we talked about it last week at our meeting when Bill was talking about the new wing and what it's going to take to manage that, all those things. But that's not Bill's fault, right? So it's not Bill mismanaging or Bill not, it's really a facilities-driven budget line. So what we did, and Michelle did a great job of pulling those lines out. I would say the AC for HMS, maybe that comes from the funds that we're projecting back from the building project, some of those things. But remember, we're trying to plan for next year. It's just what we're doing. You'll see a significance in electricity, more classrooms, more wings, fuel, that's propane, not that, yep. And then the building projects themselves. Remember, with that comes some more costs, you know, whether it is more heating or more cooling or whatever it may be. So that's where that change comes in at the 92,000, is really based around some of those drivers. Like I said, if you were to pull the AC out, I mean, you're dropping down to 70-something, you know, it's a pretty manageable number. Now, those are all estimated costs, right? So Michelle does an outstanding job of a 3-year trend, 3-year average, and all those numbers. Again, what she's doing is protecting us, right? So you can't go back and ask for more. We're trying to properly budget so that it's right on that line of not asking for too much and not asking for too little. So that's facilities. Technology, these are some of those things that we spoke about. Access fees, that would be Parent Square is 5,000. Aspen, we've been trying to update some of the models, so that's, you know, we have Aspen, but every time you try and update, there's a cost that comes with it. And really Chromebooks repairs. This is, you know, one of those things that comes along with one-to-one is repairs. Now, seeing that it's in the infancy of the program, this is a safe number to protect our investment. We're also discussing insurance plans. You know, I was a part of a district that had an insurance plan and where parents could opt in to protect it. Where I live, it's required to buy the insurance plan. So we're still looking at that number, but we felt like it was the safe thing to do to protect our investment for the first year until we solidify some of that. All right, so district SAU, I guess, would be the easiest way to classify this. Step track movement, that means anyone that's currently, let's just say, has a bachelor's, but next year they're going to finish their program. So that would be an adjustment to salary. As Michelle mentioned, we're planning on an audit. Legal fees, we're involved in the state lawsuit against inappropriate student funding. So we incur some of those costs. E-finance upgrade, and then going into some of those things that were required. What I want to point out on this line is the food service. That's going to be an eye-opener for a lot of people here. All right? And you jump in any point on how it's been done prior, but because we're trying to get away from fund balance, right? Fund balance has been a parachute, essentially, for some of these things, and one of them being food service. So if we're going to shift away, which all the anticipation, then we need to properly budget and plan for the food service. So that's why you see that. And Michelle can answer those questions in far greater detail, but we have to protect, again, it's that protection piece. We're trying to get to a bottom line budget, meaning we only ask for what we need. There's no fund balance, there's none of that. So in order to get to that point, we're going to have to protect ourselves. All right, so this is the eye-opening slide, I think, probably for anyone, and rightfully so. But remember, these are all the requests. I'm going to keep saying that. These are the requests. And we spoke about the why to them last week, and you can certainly ask any questions you need. Increased instructional assistance, some of those we don't have a choice because those are, again, driven by some of the plans that are put in place once they're finalized. So these are all anticipated. When you talk about the Harold Martin School, the extra half, we're learning that there's more building to clean, right? So that's some anticipation of helping pick up that slack. You know, you're going to hear this one a couple times, not just here, but in the curriculum committee, is one of the identifying areas we're targeting is a director of curriculum instruction and professional development. We've discussed the impact that that could have on the district, and that's K to 12. You heard the principals last week. You heard special ed speak to the significance of the change and the support it would put in place. That goes from not just curriculum, that goes to working with the adults in professional development, that can be grading and reporting, that can be the mentoring program, all these things that fall under that umbrella where it becomes their full-time job. And you heard the significance. When we're doing part-time work on top of being principals or on top of facility management or on top of all these things, then that's what happens. It ends up being the second thing, right? Principal first, then curriculum. We want to bring the area of curriculum, instruction, and professional development into focus, and we felt as though that this would be a great support for the district. Also in there is a director of facilities. Through the initial evaluation, having someone with that lens, an actual facilities director that would be the manager of all things facilities, to the safeties, to emergency operation plans, to chairing the CIP with you guys. That's that lane of what that person would do, managing the custodial staff, managing the maintenance staff. Right now, Michelle does all that work, right? She does all of that on top of being a BA and on top of being human resource as well. So that would help alleviate some of the stress out of our office. Those numbers that you're seeing there specifically is salary and benefits, right? So I want everyone to be aware that that's not the actual salary. That's all estimated calculation through Michelle, but that's what that would be for that. The numeracy is what we picked up so far. We're using ESSER funds for this year. We're seeing already growth in a short period of time, so we're suggesting to maintain that program. Director of Special Service, Admin Assistant, that was full-time, if you remember previously, then it went to part-time, and then it went to, we're funding it through part-time, grant, part not. So what we're trying to do is get that on the books because that's a significant position that should be there now. Going down the line, this is the other one I think you heard a lot about last week is the additional teacher to Maple Street. That's the only, in here it says 5th grade, but currently in 4th grade, what would happen is it would follow that cohort of the smaller group. That would put the district at K through 6 with 4 teachers per grade level. So that's the last one for that. That would allow for that continued consistent approach for the students as they're working through. And then when you get into some of the other ones, we've talked about the plus models at the middle high school, and I know Mr. Kelly can certainly answer any of those, but that allows to help with some of the work that he was talking about. Also, that middle school close the gap English class, so to speak. So for some students that don't qualify for world language or don't want to take it, it's in there as well. And then I want to point out again that reading position is another way to help close some of that gap. All right, so remember, don't get shocked, but the initial numbers that are coming in, where we were last year to where we are is about 7.39 up, and it's about a 1.6. And of that and this is where I'm going to break it down. Of the 1.6, 900,000 was additional staff requests, 92 was facility increases. And if you were to really break that number down, if we're talking just operational, so non-staffing, just operational, I think the number was 93, Michelle, is that right? We're up 93. So that's pretty good for trying to come in flat on first level. Operationally, we're up 93. Really, the areas of discussion are going to come around the humans. And that is the wrong slide. It has numbers on there that are wrong, so ignore the numbers. It was more of a visual. But just so that you get an idea of the significance of where our money goes to, it goes to the humans, right? It goes to salary and benefits, almost 75% of it. And then you get into services when we talk about special ed. So really what we're manipulating there is supplies, really supplies and services that we have an opportunity to move. And that's really that 93,000 that we talked about. But before I finalize, I need to thank, we changed, we turned everyone upside down, right? When I set new goals of October, you know, the admin team, I met with them in the summer, they met with the teachers, and no one's blinked. Everyone has stepped up, come through with budgets, had them in the system, new change, Michelle, all these things. So without them, because they're the first level of work, and what they did in August and September, and then what the admin team does to check and verify, to get to this point, it's really been the work of them. And then to you guys with the communication and being a part of it, it's huge. It's huge to hear your feedback. Last week was, I think, a great time. It was great for us. We got to know where everyone stood and the needs, and so here we are as the first level of the proposal. So at this point, I will open it up for discussion and questions from Michelle or myself, and the admin team is here tonight too to prepare to answer any questions. So.
Great. Thank you. This was comprehensive. And for folks listening or watching, I encourage people to go back and watch our working meeting that we had last Tuesday. It really helps lend a lot of context to things that we're discussing tonight. So I guess to start, does anyone have any questions for Mike?
Yeah.
So I'll start with the food service one. As I was going through, you know, that line essentially increased by 150,000. So can you just explain the mechanics of where food service was at and why this is necessary?
Sure. So before the budget has ever gotten to you guys, it's been cut down to $1. So every year, depending upon where we end the year before, it was 100, then it goes up to 125 that I asked for, and then now looking at what we had last year and thinking about for next year, you know, 150. So what ends up happening is we reduce all but $1 because we have to fully fund food service. We can't leave it in a negative, right? And so in order to do that, though, we have to transfer funds from all these other lines that we don't spend because we got to add it to that dollar to get to whatever the bottom line is for food service. So that means savings that we have from anywhere from tuition for teachers, you know, all those kind of things that we have to budget for anyways, but it kind of takes away from all of that. So what we're doing this year is putting it in, so even though it's talked about in prior years about the need, you guys have never seen it at this level being the full amount of what we need, especially working towards not having that large fund balance, but having it more of a, you know, moderate fund balance. And so then in order to do that, we're gonna have to budget for that 150.
So the $1 was a placeholder.
It was.
And essentially, those monies were paid from overages from other accounts throughout the year. And this year, we're saying, this is what we think we need, and we're gonna budget for that. Can you just spend a minute to talk about the food service? You know, I think a lot of people are under the assumption that it's a self-supporting endeavor. Can you talk about the realities of we're operating at a loss?
Sure. So one thing that probably a lot of people think is with the federal government paying 100%, we should be fine. We actually, and we're not alone, we're not. And actually, tonight I'm going to talk about that we actually got money from the state recently for food service because of our revenues went down last year. And lots of school districts, probably almost all of them in the state did. So we can only charge a certain amount. It's federal government gives us a reimbursement rate. So that's that. Doesn't matter how much we pay in staff. You know, and our staff are underneath the union contract. So we have to go by what that is. And then it doesn't pertain into food costs, and it doesn't pertain to the Northeast being maybe a higher, right? Because like we know, for instance, health insurance is definitely a higher cost for the Northeast than like out West. And there's no kind of adjustments made by that. So it really is the number of meals we sell versus what we can get from people as well as the government. The other thing is, I'm trying to think, so I've been here 17 years. I'd say probably about 12-ish years ago, I did a study, really in food service, to try to figure it out, right? Looked at other school districts. One of the things that works against us, believe it or not, is having 2 elementary schools for foods. And I love that we have 2 elementary, it's not that, and I don't mean it in any disrespect to Amy or Bill. Other districts make their money at the middle and the high schools. They don't make their money at the elementary. There's the kids that like to come in with their lunchbox, not all, but so there's all those kind of elements that work against us. So when you're trying to look at it that way, it's kind of difficult because we have 2 kitchens to run. We even looked at, could we do a vehicle and then, transport? Well, we could. We never really fully evaluated to the extent of really doing that. But, I mean, other than that, that's really, I hope it helps explain.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I'll let other folks keep going. I got a few other.
Okay, I have a few.
Yeah?
This is really helpful, thank you. So I was mostly listening last week, but I missed it. Can you tell me what geodes is again?
I'm going to ask Bill to speak more specifically, if you don't mind, to geodes.
Sure. GEODS is a program that links up really well with Wilson Foundations. Foundations is our phonics program. GEODS takes the skills in Foundations, and they're 2 different companies, by the way. Great Minds is the publisher that makes GEODS, but they have a partnership. So when kids are studying a Foundations unit, the GEODS sort of takes some of those same skills and puts it into real text. So we have many resources, guided reading books, which we'll be using anyway, but none of them necessarily line up well with Foundations exactly. I mean, they're still great reading, and it's still level reading that kids need, but at this point, it's sort of authentic text. So when you learn phonics, the skills you need, but it's not necessarily authentic text. It's not like real books. The nice thing is those exact skills go into the GEODS books. The other advantage is it comes with pretty intense, really well-written lesson plans, which revolve not just around phonemic awareness and phonics, but also comprehension of vocabulary, that sort of thing. We've been actually, Liz Cannon and I, the literacy specialist, and I've been looking at GEODS for years. In fact, there's a parent in town who works for that company, so we're able to get some samples and talk about it with someone who really knows. And we've been thinking about it for years, but like I said last week, it's just so expensive that we didn't put it in the budget, but we thought now's the time to do it.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, and then, for the technology budget and the sub budget not on the slide, it looked like there was a $43K delta in general supplies. Do you remember what that was from?
Was that reclassification?
It might be old.
It's in Matt's.
Yeah. And then there was also a change in the software.
Yeah. Matt, can you turn that off so I can look through my documents? Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, so because we went from $100 to $1,000,
Yeah,
this was really, if you look down at the replacement equipment,
yeah.
you'll see that there. And also, this is, sometimes Matt has it in a district-wide line,
Okay,
and sometimes he has it in a school-specific line. So that's when you go and look at, you kind of have to look at all the pieces to figure that out as well.
okay,
So like, for instance, that line went up 43,000.
right.
If you look at the 2 equipment on the general fund, that came out for the SAU wide, it's 10.5. Then you go down below, and Harold Barton was down by 1,500, and then Maple was down by 750, and then the middle high school was down by, looks like 4,650. Oh, sorry, and then 11.5. So yeah, there's a lot of, unfortunately, when we have to do this reclassing thing, it gets kind of
Yeah,
complicated,
okay,
and not meaning to, but, $100, it really never made any sense that, the state had it for so long at $100. And then when they did, I was like, yeah, good, because, I mean, it doesn't make any sense that a piece of equipment is $101.
right.
Well,
Okay.
just-
Or $100.01,
The
biggest change of that is really the Chromebook purchases, because they come in around $200, they're now considered supplies.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
makes
That's a
sense.
large portion of that.
Okay, thank you. And then what is Ames Web?
Ames Web,
Test.
make sure I get this right. Ames Web is an assessment program used by the elementary and middle schools for reading and math.
Got it. Okay, cool. Progress monitor.
Progress monitoring, yeah.
Awesome. And then the last question I have is on the e-finance for, how is that different? Is that a corollary software that goes with what we do
Oh,
last
so
year?
what happens is every year, unfortunately, fees go up for using their that's my estimate, because they
Yeah.
haven't come up with what their fee's gonna be for next year.
Yeah.
So
we-
that's just an
yeah.
increase for,
You know that. We upgraded,
Yeah.
right? You guys spent the money last year, and now that's just the annual cost for us to continue to
yeah,
use their service.
Is that the new format in our,
We're still not there yet,
we're
Norm.
still not there.
January, February.
very excited.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome, thank you.
yep,
So, a couple questions, Mike. So it's clear that the information you got from your leadership team, you have just passed it on to the board and you've made no reductions. You basically want us to see everything from your team and how they designed their own budget, made their own reductions. Because in the past, we've gotten a polished copy that the superintendent has made his own recommendations for reductions. So it's safe to say this is right from them to us.
This is actually right from the teachers to them, to us.
Okay.
So it is from the grassroots all the way up.
Okay.
Like I said, every year in our process, we say, put everything down. Put it all down so that we're aware of what might be coming, what we can, Bill said the perfect thing, the geodes. We've been talking about it for multiple years. We didn't think that it was okay. We didn't feel like it was the right time, and here it is. Where if you saw that iteration, if you saw that multiple years, it'd be a different discussion, right? So that's exactly where we are today. So that number is bottom to top, what everyone wanted.
No, it's great to know that. One question I've been asked quite a bit, I think a couple times at the budget committee, have we done a study yet on alternative fuel solutions for this district? Is that something in the radar?
Yeah, so I met with the 5 Rs,
Mhm.
is it 5? Okay. And then I met with the 100. And we've met with, Jim and I met last week with Solar Company. We are in the process of evaluating it. It's just not as easy as most people think, right? You don't just throw solar panels on your roof and you get free electricity. There's multiple steps. There's, you have to end up buying them out and all those things. But the short answer is our first bus RFP that went out, we had propane on there as an option. We had electric as an option. So all those things that the numbers you saw, we're trying to figure out what's best moving forward.
And then I guess, the last question, comment for right now, I'm sure I'll have more questions, is, and I kind of want to go back a little bit to Rob's comment last week about, I respect the ESSER amounts we received. I respect that, we want to be cautious with them, but is there a way of the board being able to alleviate potentially some of this budget, and being able to implement some of these into this year for our teachers and for the staff? I understand, we're taking the increase out and using ESSER funds, but I also think it's in the best interest of some of these students to have some of the things that are in here now and this year that will carry on for next year's budget too.
Yeah, so, no, that's a great point. And as we mentioned last week, I just want the public to be aware, like, we're already planning for next year. That's our responsibility. So these things that were in there through COVID weren't identified at the point last year. ESSER is going to allow us to bridge that gap on certain resources, but also understand at some point, it's going to come calling that whether we're going to continue it or not.
Yeah.
And it's the perfect example. ESSER has done a great job of automatically identifying the literacy and numeracy, right? We got those positions full-time, they're in there, they're doing their job, and now we're staring at it. Do we want to pick it up? Do we want to maintain that? Do we want it to go back to normal and be part-time? Do we want to use ESSERs to bridge the gap for another year? Maybe we don't need it full-time. So those are all, that's what that does. It allows us to play that game of now or later. And we'll be coming to you multiple times. Michelle, we met about ESSER this morning, and we started to look at the survey we sent out to the community, right? Some of those areas that we're going to bring back to you so you guys see it. Michelle and I want to be calculated with ESSER, right? We've seen districts blow through ESSER 3 already, right? Because it's easy to, I guess that's right. It's easy to use it. It's very easy. But also having that time frame, which we've never had before, allows us to be calculated, right? Can the district put it into the budget, so now it becomes a cost, and now we get to use that ESSER for another thing, right? So it really is trying to find that balance of, should we target it this year? Should it be, you know, I don't need to repeat it, but you guys get it.
Yeah, no.
Ooh, I get to ask a question.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but can you remind us what the retirement percentage is right now, the percent that
I think
schools
it's-
need to pay into?
Teachers, I think, is 20.17%.
And that's required by the state for us to pay into that. Do you know how much the state pays into it?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Great.
That used to be different. Yeah. The
Yeah.
state
Every
used to
other
pay
year, too.
portion of that.
Every 2 years you get readjusted. So we're in the off year essentially of
yeah.
readjustment. Next year, it'll be that number again.
Yep.
It'll be a readjustment.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. And then on a wildly different note, for the AC and the HMS library, is this just to run it, or is this to replace it? I guess I missed that.
Bill?
Go ahead, Bill.
Currently, the HMS library is the only one that doesn't have AC.
Correct.
Oh,
And it really is required, as Sean Marino has told me, to ensure that books last a long time.
oh,
That's why something is recommended.
okay,
Not for the people in there, of course, but primarily for the books.
okay.
And that's an area that, you know, Norm and I talked to prior to this meeting. We're still waiting for our final numbers from the building project. And once, you know, Norm said it multiple times, once we get that number, I meet with the admin team, but it goes back to us being responsible. If the number doesn't match or other priorities take up, here's something that we're looking for.
And then, is that something, because it's over 5,000, that we could put into CIP alternatively and offset from OpEx?
Yeah, that's what
Oh,
Michelle
yeah.
talked about, yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
multiple avenues.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Amy, I have a question for you. Is the fifth grade class, is this year or next year?
This year's fourth grade class.
Right.
So fourth grade this year, we have 66 students, so I'm just trying to look at the fifth grade
Yeah,
position.
This year's fourth grade, which is what I'm making the request for, there are 66 students, and we currently have 4 teachers, because we are funding the fourth position out of the ESSER.
So in fifth grade right now, we would have 3.
Current fifth grade is 75 students.
Okay, let me,
I'm getting,
yeah, you're getting messed up.
Yeah,
Right now, there's 4 for everyone, because we're funding it out of ESSER.
okay,
If we take it away because ESSER's gone,
yep,
there'll be 1 less teacher.
got it.
That 1 less teacher would be at the 5th grade level
Got it,
next
okay.
year.
Okay.
Not necessarily a 5th grade teacher, but it would be that movement game we talked about. So that's why it's asking for a 5th grade teacher, because that's essentially, it'd be following along the group.
So we'd have class sizes of 21 with 3 teachers, pretty much around there. It's 21, 21.
22, yeah, something like that.
around there. Okay,
Yep.
yeah, okay. Got it, thank you. Thank you.
Two more.
So as I was playing with the numbers today, it looks like, just talking about increases in operational, if we take out the bond and we take out food service, we're right around 140, 145, something like that, in terms of the wish list of what, well, I shouldn't say wish list. The additional requests for
Yep.
things. So a reasonable number to work with. I think one of the things, you know, in finance committee is sort of how we articulate the decrease in special ed and whether that's seen as additional revenue for other things or whether that's seen as a straight reduction in what the budget should be or not be. And I think that's a finance question. I don't know how much you want to go into like positions tonight, Mike, or if that's part of next week's work session, but I've got some questions there about things, so.
So you kind of stole my thunder there. I was going to talk about if you take away the bond and the food service, we're actually below what our goal was, right? And when I talk about flat, it's flat number operationally. Humans is, to me, humans is, it comes in, but it's a significant impact. Now, in regards to what you, it's up to you guys. That's why we built in those work sessions, is for more of that discussion and decisions at that level. Meaning next week, if let's just use, I don't know, 5th grade. Let's use 5th grade teachers since we've been picking on. if we go next week and Amy's providing you the evidence and the information, and you come and say, all right, that's one we definitely want, let's leave it in, then that adjusts the other stuff, right? Or if you come and you say, all right, facilities director is out, then that's out. So that's really what those work sessions are for. Tonight, I would think that you guys are gonna give us direction between now and Tuesday, of next week, on what you're kind of looking for. And you might not know that answer right now, right? So the goal tonight was, hey, here's everything, here's why, so the public can see it, and then from there, your question last week was so good. It was, when you said to Amy, fourth grade teacher or IAs, and she answered in a heartbeat on what it was, but your response by saying, listen, there's gonna come a time where there's only so much money, and the money's gonna make some of the decisions, and I think we're working towards that, and I think we're getting a better idea of it, so it's up to you, it really is.
Well, some things that I would like to be able to talk about and give people some time to prep for next week's work session then. In terms of the director of facilities, we have a director of maintenance now.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we're gonna have an increase, does that decrease that position in some way? Should we be seeking to eliminate that position and this be sort of an Uber, like?
Man, it's like he sat in on our meeting this morning.
So
and we've talked about that. Is it a restructure, or does it take that and eat that? Those are some of the good discussions for sure.
I think the things that I need more information about in terms of other things is at the middle high school, the additions in world language, English, science, social studies, are those projected needs to meet student requests? Or are we back, are we running classes, or are we dealing with individual folks?
Yep.
That program of studies versus person, and where that all fits. I know we talked about it last week, but it was a lot, and if we're gonna get there, that's probably.
Yep.
For the in-school suspension thing, I think really that is also a question about a second full-time sub at the high school. So the metric there, in consideration of that, is what can we project that we would save in not having to cover courses using teacher time to do that?
Yep. And we were already working on that, because that was one of the things you brought up last week, and cost savings analysis.
I guess the admin assistant for the director of student services, that number, like if that person's at 4/5, then that seems like a high number. to get
So
that.
what that is actually, this is where it gets kind of complicated. So what's in the budget for 21-22 is actually a 20-hour position. But right now, we're actually having it as 30. So when you get 30, because of the Affordable Care Act, you have to provide health insurance, affordable, right?
Okay.
So that is one piece of it, right? And so I did it, that number there is based on budget to budget with nothing being out of a grant, okay? Because of it, being really, if that's what we're gonna do, have it all in the budget, and this is what we have in the budget this year, then that would be the delta. 20 hours or even 30 hours, they don't have retirement. But going to 37 and a half hours, retirement, and,
And you've got the 20%.
Yeah, well, it's a little less because of, it's the employee part, I think it's like 16%, but, still, it's a large amount of money.
How many years ago was it full-time? Anyone?
So,
How long's it
4
been?
years ago, maybe?
4?
I think
3?
about 4 years
3 or 4?
ago.
Okay. Yeah, so, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but that was because the person that was doing it forever and was able to complete some of the task at part-time with support from others. And now, the work is, it's becoming, like, it's just, you need more hours. It's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, when you have someone that does something for so long that they gain efficiencies on things, when there's a change in a structure of a, body going and someone new coming in, that's when you really understand. And also during that switch, I'll be quite honest, I'll speak for Mandy and Becky, who's not here anymore, but you also learned what you didn't get.
And that position, just for everyone's understanding, also that role, as I understand it, is they do all the Medicaid billing and So it's a pretty critical piece to make sure that we're seeing revenue coming back that we need to.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely,
To allow Mandy to do her job
right.
as director of special ed.
And I think the same would be true of the, the director of curriculum, short-term versus long-term. I know we talked about it a lot last week, but I think I just need more time to think about the impact for the, the whole school district and where we might be able to save some money elsewhere because we have this person.
Yeah, return on investment's huge for humans, right? So what's the value they're bringing? And it's not just money, remember, it's time from teachers, time from mentoring, appropriate structures in place, evaluate all those things, and you're spot on. Making sure the return on investment's greater than what's there.
Well, yeah, and I wrote down ROI next to both of those positions. And one of them for director of curriculum is, the way I think about ROI for that is also on the overall performance of our students.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything, there's no way to do this, but I'll do some digging around, and I'm the least equipped to figure this out academically in terms of education, but like in schools that have a full-time director of curriculum, is there a delta? And I know every district is different, so it's hyper confounded, but are you able to see differences in how those students perform or the way their staff are in some of those?
So, yeah, I mean, you're right on, every district's different.
Yeah,
I think maybe some valuable data is what districts have them.
yeah.
Just who has them, right? Because that shows you structure, and the structure that can help and you heard a lot from them by saying, if we had this person, it would allow me to do this more, right? Or it would allow teachers to have this support. So, but I can get you a list of who has an actual curriculum director. That would help. But then how good is that person? That's why I have a hard time going in.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's,
Yeah.
it's major apples and
Yeah.
pears. Then our part, same thing with the director of facilities, where for the ones that, like, it's just one of those things where if we're really trying to, we just invested a lot into our facilities, and if we're trying to keep them as excellent as possible, how do we really think about that, so that maybe if there's a more comprehensive full-time position there, that we can think about reducing or being more structurally,
And we'll talk about that next week at the
Yeah.
budget session, because that was one of our main discussions this morning, is the restructure of why, right? When our director of maintenance is solving the flood issue and in the fields for 8 hours,
Right.
what's that taking away from? So that's some of the things.
Now, can you tell us what the Maple Street School IA, I'm assuming the notification was there was a change in IEP status where we were required to.
Yep.
Okay.
And that could change next week.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to communicate when you're going through budgeting is special ed, and how quickly it can change. I mean, there's evaluations going on right now, right? In whether they are moved forward or not, whether the student will qualify or not. And evaluations go on all year long. So that's why I compliment Mandy and Michelle of putting the district in a safe spot. That's what that is.
I love this, I could do this all night long.
That's why we have work
That's why I do
sessions.
for work. I guess my question is, we want to build a budget, of course, which, of course, helps our students, operational and all stuff, and we really can't put a percentage on that yet until we kind of get a feel for each role and how it formulates in there. My question is we obviously have to do that, and then we kind of have to look at finance committee and kind of see how we can gel the numbers with what we have reserved, if we want to use that, and kind of get back to the project. Is that kind of how, we could probably try to get to a point of what would make sense in order to get to a point of, percentage and impact?
You want to go or me?
Was that clear, or is that?
No, it is.
Yeah.
And I think after next week's session where next week's a chopping session, right?
Yeah.
So that's, once we get that number to, let's say 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is, then I think the finance committee comes in after, and then we start playing that mirroring game of how we're gonna bring down budgeting for fund balance, which we're not going to do anymore, how we get away. So I think that step comes after probably next week.
Yeah.
And we haven't really looked at the revenue side of life yet.
Yep.
I mean, I think, last week when we had the discussion about these positions, the curriculum director was stood out by every single leadership team. They strictly said that it would make their job, better in their schools by having a curriculum director. And since I've been here, it's been something that's been advocated multiple times. I do agree with Elsie, where other schools have that and where they are, with how they implement. I know it's hard to kind of, you don't know how the person is and how they do their job. I understand that. But that's something that I'm very interested in. And then the director of facilities, I'd like to unpack that more because to me, we want to continue to invest into our facilities. We want to continue to oversee what we're doing. We just finished a building project, well, close. I put that in parentheses, close. And how we can maintain that so we're not having any issues down the road. And I also think it alleviates a little bit for Michelle too. She said, in our work session last week, it opens the opportunity for her to do other things. So definitely unpacking that now. Rob suggests I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah.
The only other thing as I think about going into next week is I know there was the ESSER survey that was done
Yep.
about sort of community priorities. So one of those things I think about is if we're thinking about the comprehensive picture of both like year-over-year base plus maybe things that people are thinking about as a result of the pandemic and COVID, and that could be some of the mental health issues that people have talked about, that could be outdoor learning, et cetera. Understanding if we can get like an overview of sort of community
Sure. I can.
input, because then we can sort of think about if there's like short-term bucket funding like you talked about, even though there's a long
Yeah.
spending horizon, how do we think about what goes where?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I have one more question.
Hey, that's why we're here.
So, actually, I have a question and a request. So if I come by tomorrow, can I get those spreadsheets on big pieces of
Yes.
paper?
Why don't I just give you mine and I can reprint?
That'd be great. Spent a lot of time, doing all that, even on.
I want to be, you're the third person that requested it today. And I said, I'll do whatever you want. And everyone said, no, I'll stay digital. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. On those?
yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Same here. For
You guys can swing by and pick them up tomorrow.
So Mike, as I was going through the spreadsheets earlier today and looking at different categories and where increases were and decreases were, I guess part of the next question becomes, if in our work process next week, we say we want to get to X, do we get to X by saying yes to this, no to that? Or do you get to X by saying yes to this, no to that?
I think it's a collaborative, I think that's important, right? I don't want to come back on the 26th with things that you just want no part of, right? But I also want to come back on the 26th with things that we are really requesting. And that's why these work sessions are so important, because we can have those conversations. And then when we get here, just like tonight, we give an overview by saying, at the work session, we said no to this, everyone was in agreement, gone. At the work session, we were a little bit undecided, that's why it's here. Do we still, it's one of those checks and balance. So it's still a collaborative effort.
So
Because you
next
have to
week-
support what we're putting forward. If the board isn't supporting, then that makes the conversation to the community more challenging. Like, why are we, no, we met multiple times. This is what makes sense, so that's.
So next week is a work session, just like last week's work session. Everybody's here.
Yeah, a little harder next week with a little bit of what you said, meaning last week we gave you the why we're requesting. Next week will be like, all right, here's what I can take, we don't need it this year, but I'm gonna bring it back next year. Or this is something we really want, so that's the discussion.
Okay.
The hard
Thank you.
conversation. Yep.
So, this proposal, this first.
Draft, yep.
Is this going to be available to the public? And I want to explain why I think it'd be a good idea. So that's the first question.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna create, actually, I don't wanna bring up the pamphlet? It's too late, I already said it. So the pamphlet, we're gonna show the iterations. Yeah, you're not gonna get that's too much sometimes to digest.
Yeah.
We're gonna create an iteration of where we started,
Good.
then what's gonna happen, then where we go, yeah.
Because, I just want the community to understand this is what we started with.
Yep.
And then I want them to understand the progress of why we got to the number. It just shows it, I'm stamping it, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
We have to take a mic away from you.
Yeah, I know. But I think it's important for everyone to see the top not the tough choices, but just, you know, the decisions we had to make in order to start this budgeting process. And I think that having it out there, you know, I know it's going to be a big discussion on the budget committee.
Sure.
They're going to want to know, you know, just what we're starting with. And I think having that discussion before we finalize it, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, and we've talked since the beginning about level, I keep saying the word level, and now is that level bottom line number? Meaning, is that level coming in around 21.9 again? Or is that level zero tax impact, right? There's two ways to look at level. So that's gonna be some of the discussions. What's the target? Is it, like I said, if you look at our operations, minus food service, minus the bond, we're under. So we're not asking for anything more. Then we start talking about the people. So that's gonna be some of the discussion that comes out.
On that note, at what point in this process are we gonna also talk about revenue?
Michelle, what point do you wanna talk about revenue?
It really depends on how early the board wants to start the conversation. Some pieces, actually, I think some of them we won't know right yet, but some of them we definitely will. And we know what the valuation is that's gonna be used for the tax rate, that's gonna be set in the near future. So we do have that value. And I know the finance committee is still working on, so I guess first, so whenever you want, but then
Yeah.
also with that, the finance committee, is the finance committee wanting to look at revenues before coming to the board, or just having it be all at the same time, I guess is the thing.
And the reason why, the unintended consequences of moving the budget cycle up is those numbers are still rolling in. So those are definitely moving as we speak, or what we thought, or what has changed. So, yeah, certainly some guidance would help. If you wanted to go to finance, I know we're meeting, yep, thanks.
Well, yeah, finance is next week, but after the meeting.
After the meeting, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I only ask because if we have a big hole, revenue hole, that's gonna have an impact on our budget, having nothing to do with this side.
Like, I don't think that adequacy has been given out yet for next year,
In the coming year, okay,
which, a lot of our other revenues are pretty stable.
right.
It's really gonna be that little piece of it. So I'll check and see, but I don't have anything saved in my folder, so that means I didn't get it yet, but I'll go on and see.
I mean, in 2 weeks, we could give you an overview of
Yeah.
what's anticipated. And we'll just add a slide of anticipated,
Yeah.
so
I mean, we're not looking at a large goal of 800,000 like last year. It's going to be,
I don't anticipate that.
I hope not.
no, because I think make this budget process more.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so maybe I can go to you guys first. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
As Mike was saying, whether it's a flat budget or impact on, I really think you have to have both. Because there are gonna be members of the community who are gonna wanna just look at the budget and say you did a great job and it's flat, and then others are gonna say, but this is the impact on taxes. So we've gotta
Oh, it's both.
meld that together and say, we did a good job on both of those mechanisms.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's the question I have.
Yeah. And it's both, right? One doesn't happen without the other, but we want to make sure we're hitting a target so that we can communicate, that's all.
Yeah, I guess it's just the fact that like last year we had a zero tax impact, even though we had a slight increase in our budget because we increased our revenues. All right, any more questions, comments? Do you feel like you have enough information from us?
I feel like I have enough.
Move
You
forward?
feel good?
Yep. Good.
And then I'll meet with
Do you guys
them.
have anything you wanted to add to this fascinating discussion? Okay. Awesome.
All right. So that is it for current business.
Great. And then before we go on to the consent agenda, do we have the sign-up sheet?
Sign-up sheet's over
Okay.
there, yeah.
So I failed to mention in the beginning of the meeting, if anyone is interested in speaking tonight, we do have a sign-up sheet located right over there, and you can sign up. We ask that you just put down the amount of time you think that you would need to have, and we always look to aim around 3 minutes. And just as a reminder, if there's anything particular regarding any individuals, that's not something that can be discussed in a public meeting, but we can go into non-public, or you can speak with our superintendent. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Okay. It's not school, you don't need to ask for. Do you want a
All right.
hall pass? Is that that's
No hot pass.
all right.
All right, so we are going on to consent agenda.
Consent agenda.
This is all you.
Thank you. We're going to start with personnel. We have 2 resignations, both instructional assistants, Sarah Goslin and Sarah Jane. I messed it up this morning. Is it right? How do you say that? Azari? Azari? Sounds right. All right. Also, new hires, Spencer Burbank into that maintenance area that we spoke about, and Deborah Bean for food service. And then also looking to, these are those tutor positions we've talked about bringing forward, so they're going to be helping with some of our students who are out with quarantine and/or positive cases. So looking forward to move those. Under the superintendent's reports, Ed McHale, former superintendent, passed away here. Was he the actual first? Is that-
He was.
He was the first
Yeah.
superintendent here, so condolences to his family, and again, the service that he provided Hopkinton, we thank him. Enrollment in your packet, these are due to the state of New Hampshire as of October 1st. So those are official numbers. Remember, I brought you enrollment a little bit earlier. So that's as of October 1st, move-ins, move-outs, all that. So the number is 945, which is a pretty healthy number for Hopkinton. Any questions on enrollment?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
I wanted to add, typically there's always a question around that.
Well, my only thing is that, I know that you had said that obviously pre-K and K were sort of impacted by the pandemic and people are keeping their kids in private. I wasn't sure if there was also usually a jump that happens anyways from kindergarten.
Yeah, there's, in my experience, there's always typically about a 15-person jump,
Okay,
but that's pre-pandemic.
right.
So whenever we were targeting, whether, we were in Milford or Hampstead or whatever, we'd always say, all right, if we're currently enrolled at 47, I'd be looking at 62.
Yeah,
It's typically that. So, but pre-pandemic has kind of thrown that off.
okay.
Because a lot of people have been keeping their kids with who they've been using since the pandemic hit.
Okay.
So if a student comes in, let's say in December, they get a certain percentage from the state, or is it nothing at all? So let's say $3,500, right, per student?
37 change, something like that.
So
Yeah, we're
do-
based on, it's October 1st, so is there a percentage
If
once they move in?
10 homeschoolers coming in,
It's as of whatever date, they come in. So
Yeah.
they do,
It's when they come
it's
in.
a rolling,
but is it a percent?
ADM.
We get a percent?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay, all
Yeah.
right, cool. That's what I wanted.
Do you know if you had a lot of people absent at all that day? Because I know this is just a snapshot of who was in school officially on October 1st.
Oh, so it's not that, yeah, the way we run it,
You get
there's
everybody.
anomalies, yeah, so,
Great.
yeah, it's not just that day.
Okay,
It's,
perfect.
yes. Okay, update on pool testing. This has been a discussion you guys have been asking for some information on. And I said I would come this week with a recommendation on which vendor to move forward with, and that's going to be Ginkgo. I met with the nurses today, and the reason we really settled on Ginkgo is because of the procedure, right? With UNH, it was students leaving class, walking down to I'll call it the testing station. That means we would have to have staffing in place there to monitor whatever. We don't want anyone alone, any of our students. And with Ginkgo, they come to the classroom. We'll have a teacher obviously present, so that will allow that to proceed. So really looking for recommendation to move forward with pool testing. Remember, it's going to be completely opt-in. We're going to go work with Ginkgo on sending those forms out. But it'll go back to kind of what Rob was asking, is we don't know how many we're going to get. If we're going to get 3%, 5%, 60, 65, whatever it may be. The nurses felt like it was a great practice to have in place for in case there's a swing, right? So we don't want to be catching up. If we go forward with it, we get the right people in place, we get to build those relationships, we get to set up some stuff. So really that was the update. I told I'd come with a recommendation, and that would be through Ginkgo. Questions on pool testing?
So do you need a motion?
I just need support. It's my job. That's what you you're having me do. It's more about, you know, you guys brought it up about 4 weeks ago, and we've kind of gone through those steps, so just really to support the superintendent moving forward with Ginkgo is fine. Good?
So moving forward, it's going to be, parents will get an opportunity to sign in, it's optional complete. And does this come back to the board if it's only 2%, or are you?
I'll give you updates, same thing. Under updates, I'll give you an idea.
No matter who opts in, we're going to move forward with it.
Sure.
Okay.
We're going to put the structures in place. I think that's the best way to
Okay.
explain it to start. The structures will be put in place, the forms will go out, and then from there, I'll give you an update on how many have opted in and whether, you know, if it's efficient, it's not efficient.
Yeah.
I'll reiterate again, the SAS program and us testing symptomatic students has been huge for us. And we were a leader in the state. We're still one of the ones that are around the towns that are testing symptomatic students. And we've been working with families. So it's helped us keep kids in school. You know, that was the goal. Remember, 180 days. So having that in place, I think we've tested about 150 middle high schoolers already. And that's to keep them in school. So that part of the program is paid dividends. And now we're going to start looking at the next side of the program and the benefits of it.
And a lot of it has been a lot of these students saying, I want to get tested. You know, if something's happened in some event or something like that, but they volunteer themselves and get permission from their parents, whatnot. And I think it's great to see.
They want to be in school, right?
They want to be in school.
Yeah.
And there's no one's dragging them
Yep.
to the nurse's office. It's
Yep.
great.
Want to be in school.
I have just one
Yeah.
quick thing for pool testing. And I don't know if this is information that you'd update the board or maybe update the community, but I could imagine that folks, if folks do not choose to sign up immediately, kind of what is that procedure if you would like to sign up at a later time?
So I
How
have
that works?
to ask the lead on that.
Okay.
We also, and I just wrote a note, we also talked about a parent information night, and they've been more than willing to do a Zoom for that, for anyone that wants to log in. So
Okay.
those are those next steps that I'll work through. But they've found through the other districts that typically it's been a low opt-in. It has been. And then as families or students have seen how successful it is, that they've had people opting in. So that'll be a nurse and I'll work with them on how we opt in at that point. But I'll work on the parent info night too.
Thanks.
All right, South Africa trip. Now, this was prior to me. The board supported. Chris, can you help me? What's the name of the group? South Africa group? Who's going to South Africa?
So Chris Board put
Yep.
this together, and they have in the past collaborated with Bow High School. They've
Correct.
taken a small group of 15 to 20 students. They have it's an ELO experience as well, so they can gain credit over those 2 weeks. So there's a curriculum that Chris employs when they are out there, getting incredible experiences with the wildlife. I mean, it's an unbelievable experience.
Yeah, and you guys have supported, it's already been approved. I'm just bringing it back to the forefront because the group wanted to just reaffirm that we're still go. And so we're planning all of this
Rita Blanchard, Hopkinton. Just in light of what was just discussed in the masking, I don't know if you all noticed the masks on the ground on your way in. Anybody did? On your way into the school. I'm curious because I forgot that somebody had mentioned an African trip. Do we have a drama class going on right now? Is there drama in the schedule?
I think they're starting.
Yeah.
Drama club, I think, I mean, like, right,
There's never been a
it's not a class.
Drama club?
Yeah.
Okay. And an Africa trip tentatively scheduled coming down the pike?
It's for next June, and it was approved back in 2019.
Okay, pre-COVID. And we're buying new desks for social distancing and letting kids do drama class, and we're gonna think about letting them get on a plane to Africa.
So those desks were purchased back in April when we all were required to go back into person full-time, and that was exactly what the ESSER funds were
All right,
determined to be for.
perfect. Thanks.
Yep. All right. I think we've made it. We good? Great. All right, so moving on to other business, old business committee updates.
So I put everyone on there because we had quite a busy week. So it's up to you how much you guys want to share and how far we got.
Yeah. Should we go on down the list?
Sure.
Yeah? I'd like to start. Start with Rob. 'cause I'm pointing to
So
you.
finance, we met on the 30th, and essentially 4 topics were discussed, and I think the headline topic was moving forward a system that focuses on fund balance, and, with the understanding of it becomes revenue, and therefore in the following year, and kick me, Michelle, when I get this off, in the following year, it becomes an expectation that's built into the budget. So we are essentially budgeting for an overage that we need to have for revenue to keep the tax rate. It's confusing, so we talked about moving towards a bottom line budget in the process to get there in a meaningful way that is feasible. We talked about forecasting in a flat budget, in operating and warrants. We talked about changes in state adequacy. It looks like we will be getting some additional money from the state this year. That number I don't believe has come out yet, but we should be seeing some more money. And then the last thing we talked about was in the budgeting process, thinking about, particularly at the middle high school, budgeting for sections of classes, not the number of students that sign up for a class. And I'll just spend, a little bit of time here because the history at Hopkinton Middle High School, particularly the high school, is you had to hit a target for a class to run. And this is me speaking as a former teacher and as an individual school board. So essentially what would happen is if you had, so many students, say call it 10, call it 11, the class does not run, but if you have 12 or 13, the class does run. It becomes very, very difficult for students to plan. It becomes difficult for the school to budget. And essentially, you are handicapping certain students, not giving them access to certain courses, which should be part of the curriculum. So, my emphasis on this is to say we should be running a program that provides students with a curriculum that affords them what they need to get into the colleges, universities, tech schools,